Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. I'm only seeing what's in the thing now. So is this the first one you want to work with?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the photograph, so would you describe yourself as a street photographer?
I would probably describe myself as a street photographer. I've spent a lot of my professional career being portraits, fashion, studio, but my passion was always outside. It was always the things that you can't control. And it's also the hardest stuff to do.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone does it and everyone does it badly. There are very few people that do it well.
Right.
For a very good reason. It's very difficult.
So in this photograph the shot is here in Hong Kong, or it's in Asia, but I'd assume it's in Hong Kong. The shot is of somebody, like a sort of worker outside at what are those saws called? It's not a bandsaw, but what's that called?
Bandsaw, yeah.
Kind of bandsaw. So it's got that whole metallic, silvery stuff. He's wearing this kind of crimson vinyl apron, a white shirt with, for some reason, he rolled up the sleeves on his very skinny brown biceps. He's sawing through some meat, it looks like, I'd say.
Frozen pork, I think.
Frozen pork. He's got a cigarette sticking out at his mouth, which is seeing people smoking is kind of like, oh, that's from a long time ago. So this guy's probably in his 60s. He's got his little reading glasses just perched at the bottom of his nose. It's amusing that he's smoking over this meat that he's cutting. I guess the cut is probably ribs, would you say?
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Who knows? So probably shot in Shangwan-ish area, or not, I may be wrong. So why don't you take us into this image? Like why start with this one?
So this image means a lot to me because I came to Hong Kong as a trailing spouse. My wife had the job. I didn't have a job. It took me a while to get any work here. Hong Kong I found very hard. I found it very ugly. And I found it nigh on impossible to take pictures in. It's the hardest place I've ever been in the world to take pictures.
Okay.
And everyone was surprised about that. And I very quickly lost purpose, and I was really struggling mentally to kind of figure out how this new life of ours was going to work and work well. And I was having a really hard time. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go and try and capture Hong Kong. I'm going to try and figure out what Hong Kong is.
Yeah.
You know, I can't seem to understand it. So I left our flat every morning and I walked every street in Central, then into Shangwan, then into Sai Pun, blah, blah, blah. And then I crossed over and I did the same in Kowloon, and I walked everywhere.
Nice.
And in that process, I was like, whoa, I just couldn't find any pictures to take pictures of. And I kept looking at what people were taking pictures of. You've got Sunset Pier, you've got the crosshatches with taxis on it, you've got this. And I was like, well, that's not me. That's everybody's copying. Everyone's doing the same thing. And it was driving me insane. The harder I looked, the less I could see. And then one day, I was in Shangwan. It's Shangwan. It could be Shangwan, could be Sai Pun, but it's sort of. And I cut through an old shopping arcade, one of the really old ones along the front, and there was this guy. I took this picture, and at that one moment, I realized I'd been looking in all the wrong places.
Ah, okay, interesting.
And so this picture then sparked a project. All the pictures, the 4 pictures that we're going to talk about today, are all from the same project, which is my Hong Kong project.
Okay.
And then it started to kind of make sense. But this was the image that kicked it all off and transformed my whole Hong Kong, because, as I said, I was really struggling kind of mentally. And so this project was actually really useful for me to just in a mental health journey. And so I thought, for the purpose of this podcast, it might be interesting to basically admit that and kind of talk about the mental health journey of coming to a foreign country without purpose and struggling.
Right. Okay. Beautifully put. So, okay. Where to begin? So as we're walking up, I'm just like, don't speak. I don't want to hear any of your stories until we're sitting. And now we're sitting. And I've like, as I knew it would happen, I'll have so many questions. Okay. So the whole idea of how you integrate with a new culture where everything's new and kind of different. And you're like, well, how do I find myself? Now, somebody who's listening to this, who doesn't have the tool, like you have this sort of expressive tool of photography. So, and then some people might be writing, some people might not even be anything like that. They just sort of muscle through. But let's see talk about how photography lets you do that. Because for some people, photography is this mechanical thing, like it's just capturing the light and the scene and whatever. And it's not like a painting where you spend hours to kind of work on a scene based on some composition. Whereas this, in a way, is kind of like it's what you're responding to now at the moment. It's in the world. And it's just that you notice this guy smoking, cutting the meat. And then for some reason that kicked off all these switches in your head. You're just like, oh, wait a second. And then that gelled into a project. So why don't you talk about, as if you're explaining your translator to somebody who doesn't understand your process.
So I teach photography as well. And that's actually the crux of everything. I can teach you how to take photographs with an SLR camera in probably 10 minutes. And you can be happy and go away and take pictures. You can't do that in painting. You can't do that in anything else. People then get very confident and think that they've got it. But actually, photography is a lifetime journey of learning, and every time you think you know, you don't know. And you have to be open to that. So effectively, I'm like someone who never grew up. I still have a very childish approach to the world. Everything is interesting. I look down every corner. I'm enthusiastic about things. If there's a hole in a window, I want to have a quick little look in there. Yeah. And for me, the world is a visual Tetris, I call it. Okay. And photography allows me to try and get this visual game into some kind of order which makes sense. And it's not impossible most of the time. And again, you see very few people who do that very well because it is so difficult. And also because people... there's another side to photography that I've always said that I learned very, very early on. I remember I took these pictures and everyone was like, these are amazing. And I honestly looked at them and thought, did I take those? I don't remember taking these. And I have this thing that all my best pictures, I'm kind of blind when I take them. It's like something has taken over. And I sort of say that to be a professional photographer is like being a shaman in some way. You have to be able to summon up the state of mind to allow the things to come to you. Most people, when I see people taking pictures, they're hunting. They are looking for things. Right. And I always look and I go, you're not going to see anything. Yeah. And so for me, I plan very little. I don't like to know anything about the area I'm going to. I don't want to pollute the space. And so I go in totally naive, and I will wander around, and I will basically banish everything. I'll try and sometimes I wear headphones, but noise cancelling ones to try and take out some of the noise. Very rarely do I listen to any music. And I just try and soak it up, and I just try and feel it. Yeah. And like I say, so these things just kind of like come to you, and sometimes you don't even know what's happened. This was interesting because I thought it was funny, and I later then discovered finding humor in Hong Kong is like looking for rocking horse poop. It is. I love humor.
Yeah.
You know, you go to New York, every street corner, there's something happening.
Right.
Europe is just quirky and fun everywhere. There's so many characters. Here it's very, very different. It's brutally honest and functional most of the time.
Interesting.
And that doesn't make for great pictures.
That's really interesting. Okay. So here's how here's how the podcast kind of works. You say something, it goes into my head, and I go, oh, that made me think of that, and I say something, and then you're like, is there a question in there? I'm like, I don't know. You know. So in this case, interesting that you're kind of walking around almost systematically saying, okay, there's this thing that I'm going to either run into or discover or experience that'll kind of sort of bring Hong Kong down to size. And you're right that when you walk around, I do feel like for the longest time, when I first got here, I really did feel, and it's a great way of putting it, that everything's really functional. It's very like literal. It's very like, I think maybe because of the linguistic barrier, you know, English versus Cantonese, sometimes people have to be extremely literal or else there's a misunderstanding. Right. And so interesting that one of the things that you said was you don't really find a lot of humor, or you didn't really see a lot of humor, because it does feel super functional and everybody's just kind of and yet here we are on this island, which is extremely quirky. If you look at it with new eyes, right? Like, 'cause for me, I haven't been here in years. And it is like, you know, we walked up and I saw something, I don't remember what I saw, but yeah, this giant or like a sculptural teapot with like fake water running down or something, you know, but I don't even know if there's a question there. Sorry.
Well, so things like the fake teapot, that would have been outside a tea shop, that's been salvaged and chucked outside a little clan house like place. And as much as that could be fun and quirky, it's awkward. It doesn't make an image, and that's very systematic of Hong Kong. And if it's not that, then it's got some street furniture right in front of it, or in a long place, and a million LED lights that come off shops and things. And although the people are quirky, they're kind of quirky in without being particularly confident in their quirkiness.
Okay.
And so you see the kids dressed in, I don't know, like Travis Pickle from Taxi Driver, and you go, whoa, that could be really cool. But somehow they managed to sanitize it by not owning it in a way. Okay. And you're like, wow, I never thought a Mohican could be so tame.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah, I love sitting in front of people who are dedicated to expression and art and whatever. So obviously you've been in photography for a long time.
It's the only thing I've ever done.
Okay. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.